and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
Prime Minister, we are just yards away from where the Titanic was built and designed. Are you captaining a sinking ship going into this election?
should Rishi Sunak sack his advisors? Plus, the party's over for Michael Gove, and
we will assert our rights. That's why I'm standing to be an independent candidate for the people of Islington North.
Keir Starmer's worst nightmare is happening. Also, is Britain on the brink of a race war? Plus,
Alastair Stewart, and for the first time on British television, live in front of a representative studio audience, we'll be hearing from three men, each hoping to be the leader of the next UK government in the first election debate.
TV legend Alastair Stewart is live with us to discuss what it takes to win a TV debate. Also tonight,
Starmer and the opportunity-destroying, aspiration-hating Labour Party.
Well, it looks like the Tories are dumping pro-Boris candidates. Plus,
I grew up working class. I've been fighting all my life, and I won't stop now.
Is Sir Keir Starmer really working class? On my panel tonight is the top team of journalism royalty John Sargent, Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju, and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Oh yes, and who is ex-Trump advisor Steve Bannon talking about here?
We're gutless and feckless, and we're unclubbable, and we're proud of it, okay?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. Britain is on the brink of a race war. Next.
Thanks, Patrick. Good evening. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom, and we start with some breaking news. Andrea Leadsom has become the latest MP to announce that she will not stand at the general election. In a letter to the Prime Minister, the Health Minister said she had come to the decision after careful reflection, but did not go into further detail. It comes just hours after Michael Gove posted his resignation letter, saying it's time for a new generation to lead. 78 Tory MPs are now leaving Parliament, a post-war record-breaking exodus. Michael Gove said it's time for a new generation. Rishi Sunak has been greeted by a group of pro-Palestine protesters as he visited a college in the West Midlands this afternoon. The situation was described as tense as the PM arrived at South Staffordshire College in Cannock, the last stop on his UK tour. Police officers formed a guard for Mr Sunak as his entry to the college was delayed, and he was quickly ushered into the building as the crowd surged around him. Whilst inside, activists with banners and flags chanted, "Free Palestine." Labour has ruled out any deals with the SNP after the election, even in the event of a hung parliament. Sir Keir Starmer has been campaigning in the east of Glasgow today, which is one of the seats that he's hoping to take from John Swinney's party. Sir Keir said the SNP's only ambition is to break up the UK, and there would be absolutely no deal with the Scottish nationalists. Well, GB News can reveal that more than 10,000 Channel migrants have crossed illegally to the UK so far this year. The milestone figure was reached today after another 154 people arrived in Dover, having crossed in 3 small boats this morning. It's a blow to Rishi Sunak on his second full day of campaigning after he promised that his government would stop the boats. The former boss of the Post Office has been accused of living in La La Land over her role in the Horizon scandal. Paula Venables, again, becoming emotional today. On her third day of giving evidence, she admitted making mistakes and accepted that there was no one else to blame, but she claimed that she didn't know why important information hadn't reached her. Sam Stein, KC, described that as absolute rubbish, and he suggested that Ms Venables had failed to ask the right questions. And finally, the documentary filmmaker Morgan Spurlock has died at the age of 53. He came to prominence with his Oscar-nominated film Super Size Me in 2004, which tracked his health while he ate nothing but McDonald's for a month. The film was credited with prompting a broad conversation about how fast food and rising obesity impacted society. Mr Spurlock passed away in New York due to complications from cancer. Well, if you want the latest stories, sign up for GB News alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Patrick.
It is Friday, yes, that's right, and as the general election campaign hots up, there is a terrifying backdrop. Britain may be on the brink of a race war. On October the 7th, Hamas attacked Israel. This was greeted by scenes of celebration in parts of the country. And in the weeks that followed, we saw pro-Palestine marches and anti-Semitism counter-protests, but in the last couple of weeks, things have stepped up a notch. Initially, the student protest seemed almost laughable. The staged die-in at Oxford University, posh, possible trust fund babies at Exeter screaming into a megaphone.
After 8 months, we finally did something. We shut it down!
And revolutionary communists in Cambridge wearing masks and losing their voice.
What are you here protesting about?
Might not get a better opportunity than this to talk to
What's your
someone.
message to the Palestinian people? What's your message to Hamas? What's your message to Israel? Hi, I'm Suella. I'm keen to find out your views and what you're protesting about.
Nothing at all?
I'm really keen to hear what your message is to Israel.
No. But it has got more sinister. Swastikas have been found carved into toilet doors at Regent's Park College at Oxford University. And pro-Israel supporters were subjected to vile abuse at a 250,000-person strong march last Saturday. And guerrilla tactics are now being used by the pro-Palestine brigade, turning up at cinemas, showing Israeli films and trying to shut them down or spray paint them in red graffiti. Like last night at East Finchley, you can see the red paint just scrawled across the front of the Phoenix cinema there. And now the pro-Israelis have had enough, and they are turning up in serious numbers. And they are sending the pro-Palestine fanatics packing. My concern is this. The pro-Palestine brigade will not like the fact that they've just been utterly humiliated there, and I think we can expect some serious retaliation. And Jewish community members have clearly decided that they're just not going to take this anymore. I think it's reasonable to wonder if Britain is on the brink of some serious race war violence. But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I've got former BBC and ITV chief political correspondent John Sargent, political commentator Joanna Jarju, and political commentator as well, Alex Armstrong. Alex, your views on this? Do you think that we might be one more fractured protest away from some kind of race war spilling out the street?
Yeah, well, it certainly seems that way, doesn't it? And, you know, the Met Police have failed so many times now to get on top of all of this anti-Semitism we've seen at these protests and make a strong stance on it. You know, we've seen the excuses, the tweets that have had to be, you know, rescinded after being sent, after excuse of the Met Police saying, oh, no, we're going to let that jihadi flag stay up, we're going to allow the Nazi placards here or there and just ignore them, but we will take down anyone counter-protesting quite viciously. And this is the problem. They've given rise to a group of fanatical people who have taken over a peaceful protest in most cases, and now those more violent people are starting to show up in numbers, and putting swastikas on anything is absolutely vulgar.
OK. Joanna, are you concerned? I mean, when I looked at what happened last night in East Finchley, I thought we were potentially one bottle being lobbed in either direction away from, you know, seriously erupting, I think.
Well, I think that obviously it's horrible for them to have done something like this with the swastika, and it's disappointing as somebody who's been to some of these protests that it's being hijacked in this way. I think that, you know, rather than this being a race war, I think it's more so a culture war, because when it comes to people who are neo-Nazis, you know, globally, we see it from different countries. You know, even in Ukraine, sometimes Russia kind of use the excuse that they're invading Ukraine because they want to denazify the country. So I think that it's more so a mindset, but clearly this is different in the sense that this was beyond even passive aggression, in the sense that somebody was clearly trying to, you know, more than offend the Jewish community, and we don't know who it is at this point, but it really is a shame for the bigger cause. And I think that vandalism as well, you protest to kind of show your support, to influence some sort of change, but I think as soon as you start to vandalise, it ruins the argument completely.
Yeah, John, what's your view on this? Whether you want to call it a culture war, a race war or whatever, I suppose the better term for it might be a serious violence. I mean, I can quite easily foresee a situation as this escalates on our streets in the coming weeks where there are genuinely violent clashes now between two groups of people.
It might be, but it's not a race war because Muslim is not a separate race. So it's probably easier not to talk about it in terms of two races. If you're Jewish, then it's a Jewish race, and you've got your homeland and you've got a whole different way of looking at the world. The idea that just because you're a Muslim activist, it's a different race, I think that's a mistaken terminology, and I think you've got to be very careful about that. Because, of course, what you're talking about essentially is a really serious political argument about what is going on in the Middle East. Not in Oxford, not in London, but in the Middle East and what's developing there. And that is much more likely to affect how people see it on television and how they're responding to it. So one shouldn't see it as being, oh, this is something which is getting worse in Britain and therefore it's escalating. The root of it all is what's happening in Gaza and what's happening to the Israel government, the extent to which they're more and more isolated across the world, and all those things are having a really serious effect on how people are perceiving what's happening in Gaza.
It's the perception is on all Jewish people now. You know, it seems that anyone who's Jewish, they've gone to East Finchley for a reason. Let's be clear about that. That's a massive amount of Jewish people living in that area. So they're not targeting Israel's government. They are targeting specifically Jewish people who live in London, who they can easily show up at their door and intimidate.
Yeah, but there are lots of people who are involved in these things. So the moment the extremists take over, you think, oh, so it's like a snowball. It's getting worse and worse. It's not actually. The more the extremists get involved, the more run-of-the-mill ordinary students who feel strongly about this won't go. And also remember what's happening. The holidays are about to come. Students are about to leave at the end of term. So the assumption that the moment it gets worse, it'll go on and on getting worse and worse, I don't think so.
Yeah, OK. I mean, my concern really with this is, and I saw it last night, is and I know from speaking to a variety of different people, which is that a lot of the pro-Israel lot feel as though enough is enough now, and that they've been, you know, kind of punched and punched and punched, and they have decided to clap back on this. And I don't think, Joanna, that the pro-Palestine Brigade are going to take that particularly well. And I just wonder whether or not the genie's already out of the bottle now, and we are, you know, potentially a couple of weeks away from reporting something very serious.
I'll be completely honest, you know, for the first time in the last couple of weeks, I've been more and more concerned about that as well, as we've seen kind of more aggressive scenes, and I think that that's kind of from both sides in some instances. I know that, you know, a lot of the time we'll kind of talk about one particular side and incidents, but I think that both sides are being more riled up and feeling like they have to be more defensive. But I think that it's difficult when, you know, obviously somebody who's Jewish is very easily identifiable, and then people have an idea of what they think that a Muslim person looks like as well. And similar to what John was saying, it's not necessarily a race thing because, you know, for example, in Africa, how many people, the majority of Africa are also of the Muslim faith. So then it then puts a target on people who are visibly, quote-unquote, Muslim, as well as people who are visibly
We can
Jewish
actually
as
just
well.
see this was a development today. Now, Rishi Sunak's election campaign, it's fair to say, has not got off to the best start. But he was out and about today, and there was a protest that took place. I mean, it's everywhere people go now, it seems. I think I can play to you a little clip of a pro-Palestine protest at Rishi Sunak's motorcade today. Yeah, and it's the sense, I think, Alex, that it's everywhere. It's everywhere people go now. Has this started because we didn't nip this in the bud early doors?
Well, but I think this has started because it's been riled up by a very specific group of people who have a point to make. What's really depressing about this is that we've just hit a general election, possibly one of the most critical general elections in a generation, and the focus is on a war that has nothing to do with Britain, will never impact British people, and instead it's being a massive distraction. The left need to sort out their back door. If they really, really want to start protesting, why don't they talk about the cost of living? Why don't they talk about energy bills? Why don't they talk about things that matter to British people? It's going to really distract the public from what is important. But quite frankly, that we know why these people are out protesting, because they want to. It's all about what the popular thing is right now.
Well,
if it was something else, they would be out protesting
I
that,
don't
wouldn't
think
they?
it's that. I think that obviously we're seeing a continuation of these protests because when it comes to the Palestinian side, it really is an ongoing situation. So if, for example, the Jewish side, the pro-Israel people do go out and protest in favour of obviously releasing the hostages as they should, that was one incident on October 7th, whereas people are more and more people are dying.
We're now seeing, you know, videos of where some of these hostages' bodies were found, all of this horrific stuff that's coming out. Hamas releasing videos of some young Israeli female soldiers that they were talking about committing horrendous acts of sexual violence to. And I think for a lot of the Jewish community, there is a sense that it's one thing having the marches every other Saturday through London. It's another thing if we want to go to our local cinema and watch a film and you're outside spray painting it in red and shouting and screaming and banging drums. You know, let us at least live our day-to-day lives, and that's where I've got this point of concern now, which is I think we are seeing the counter-protests, which I think are absolutely fair enough, by the way. My concern is where this leads in the next couple of weeks. It just feels a bit...
No, I actually completely agree, because I almost feel as if, you know, a lot of the people who were protesting on the Palestinian side are actually there protesting for a ceasefire as well, for it to stop on both sides. But also, when you're targeting people who are actually, you know, that's not Jewish people
going to Finchley,
or people in that area. Syria
Finchley,
and not the Israeli government.
Those people going to Finchley are looking for trouble. They're doing it deliberately.
I think you've got to separate those activists with the students. It was interesting when you saw their list of demands from the students. And what did they say? They were talked about what the university should do about investments in Israel and so on. But the big point at the end, in capital letters, was amnesty. So don't throw us out of the university.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And you felt that's really, you know, these are young people. They want to make their feelings known. But the assumption that they now want to involve themselves in a race war, most of the people that I know, or the young people that I talk to, they actually want to they want to do two things. They want to express their feelings politically because they now feel grown up and they want to be able to express it. That's fine. But they also want to make sure that they also have a career at the end of it.
I hope you're right about that, but I am very fearful that there are a huge amount of people who are right on the brink of some kind of violence here. A spokesman for Regent's Park College, this is the Oxford college where there were swastikas found daubed on the toilet door, says the college has made it clear that it takes this incident extremely seriously and that it is completely unacceptable. It is a distortion of our statement to suggest otherwise, so presumably someone must have accused them of not taking it seriously, but there we go. Still to come, as Sir Keir Starmer performs yet another screeching U-turn, this time on university tuition fees. Can we really trust a word the leader of the Labour Party says? Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Haigh joins me live. Plus, as Sunak claims Starmer lacks the courage to face him in a televised election debate, I am going to speak to the man that knows all about what it takes to win one.
Alastair Stewart, and for the first time on British television, live in front of a representative studio audience, we'll be hearing from three men, each hoping to be the leader of the next UK government in the first election debate.
The legend himself, Alastair Stewart, is live and he's next. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him for go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling him a that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And, so, you know, Gareth, speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm not
what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, we discuss how much of a headache Jeremy Corbyn will give Sir Keir Starmer by standing as an independent in Islington North. It's not just that, though, is it? He's probably going to be campaigning, including maybe against Sir Keir Starmer in his seat. Fascinating little side story to this general election. But first, to GB News and broadcasting legend Alistair Stewart. Now, Rishi Sunak has claimed that Mr Starmer doesn't have the courage to face him in a televised election debate after the Tories challenged the Labour leader to 6 head-to-heads over the next 6 weeks. Mr Sunak has said that his opponent should want to debate him.
I heard this morning that he said he wanted to debate the British people rather than me. I think what the British people want are answers to the questions about what he would actually do if he became Prime Minister and how much it's going to cost them in higher taxes. I think those are the answers that he should be providing. And it's either going to be Keir Starmer or me that's Prime Minister on July the 5th, and he should want to debate me. I want to debate him, and I hope that he takes up the offer.
But Sir Keir, who has agreed to the traditional 2 televised election debates, claims he doesn't need more because the Prime Minister is too predictable.
Sounding increasingly desperate, I have to say. Of course there are going to be TV debates. They're part and parcel of the election cycle now. I obviously want to spend as much of my time talking to voters directly. I could do 100 debates with Rishi Sunak, but I know what he's going to say. He's going to say everything's fine, the cost of living crisis is over, the health service hasn't got any problems. And, you know, that is all he ever says. Of course there's going to be debates, but he is sounding a bit desperate now.
But what does it take to win a televised election debate? Well, my next guest, Alistair Stewart, knows all about how leaders can woo the nation after he chaired the first ever election debate in 2010 between David Cameron, Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg.
I'm Alistair Stewart, and for the first time on British television, live in front of a representative studio audience, we'll be hearing from 3 men, each hoping to be the leader of the next UK government in the first election debate.
Gosh, it feels like a long time ago, that now, doesn't it? I'm very pleased to say that Alistair joins me now. Alistair, great to have you on the show. Fantastic. Well, firstly, what was it like, that first ever televised debate, a moment of TV history?
It was absolutely nerve-wracking, and I hope that little intro there that you very kindly played didn't show it, but we were terrified because we were first only because we literally drew straws between the BBC, Sky and ITV. And ITV won, and we said, yeah, OK, fine, we'll go first. And then the BBC went second and Sky went last. And it was a huge responsibility because if we'd screwed it up, then it would have made it very, very difficult for it to become, as Starmer said, you know, it's part and parcel of the broadcasting landscape, which it had been in America for decades, but it wasn't here. What you're looking at right now, that's a first. That is a very, very first. Gordon, Dave and Nick, first time it ever happened. And I'd just pick up on 2 very quick points because I think that both Keir and Rishi made a reasonable point about debating with the people. When we reflected on it afterwards, Adam, David Dimbleby and I all agreed that what we really wished there had been was more direct contact from the audience, from the people with the leaders, more cut and thrust, like we get on GB News with the People's Forum. And I think that is a lesson that hopefully will have been learnt. The second thing I would say is, and you're looking there now, there he is, that's the People's Forum, there's Rishi. I think after we'd done our bit, there then became too many. And it became cluttered. And if you've got a lot of candidates up there, like in Scotland, for example, then it loses focus. There was a sharpness in having only the three people who, in that election, one of them was going to be Prime Minister, come what may. It wasn't going to be a coalition again. And that really matters. And my final point, and it's advice and guidance to whoever picks up the mantle, is I think that what Adam, David and I all did was to make it about the leaders. It wasn't about us. And I think some of the subsequent debates became a little bit too much about the presenters.
I think I know who you might be talking about there, yes. But when it comes to how they win these debates, what does it take to win a debate? We've had some infamous moments, haven't we? I agree with Nick. We've had... It really can be... I think Ed Miliband stumbled at one point. It's a bit unlucky, but it does... These moments matter. What does it take to win one of these TV debates?
I think one of the key things in this television era and instant commentary on social media is that it's about charisma. And I remember when I was doing economics and politics at Bristol University, we did a course on charisma. And charisma is people like Churchill, it's people like Fidel Castro, it's even like people like Hitler. And the public are aware of who Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer and Ed Davey are, but they don't really get a feel of them that much. And I think the debate, because it's so focused on them and they're getting questions that they don't know, they can make an intelligent guess that they're going to be asked about the economy and they're going to be asked about the health service. They don't know exactly what the candidate is going to say. And it's how he or she, in this case, he says it, and the look in the eyeballs and that physical language that you and I as professional interviewers look out for that really does tell everything. And that's why I think to get the public more directly poking questions at these people, as we do in the People's Forum, is a good idea. I mean, my principal reflection on the debate that I did was that Nick did come from nowhere. I mean, I vaguely knew he was. I knew Paddy Ashdown much, much better. And Nick came into his own and was a towering figure in that debate. Gordon, who I knew very well, I'd expected to be the arch academic, which he was in many respects, and just churn out the numbers, churn out the facts and figures. Dave, who I knew very well, because we'd worked together at Carlton Television, I thought was going to be the star. I thought he'd walk it. And I think he looked a little bit like a bunny in the headlights. So people learn slightly different things, even if they go into the audience with their preconditions and their pre-assumptions.
We're in
so
a really...
It's about buzz.
It's about, well, you've got plenty of that, Al, but we're in a fascinating time at the moment, because normally, not always, but normally, the incumbent Prime Minister doesn't really want to do that many debates. They'd like to do one or two. But it's almost like roles reversed. We've all seen the polls. So it looks as though Keir Starmer, could go on to secure a victory. So Rishi Sunak this time seems to be the one who's going, come on, debate me, debate me, debate me. Who do you see doing better out of those debates? And how many debates do you think we should have at this election?
I would go for 2 or 3, and I think that we showed with the and you'll remember this because you're involved in it in the hustings debates that we did, and GBNews was asked to do when I did Rishi and Liz up in Manchester, and really enjoyed it. I think if they become too widespread, then there is a problem, and I think Keir mentioned it in your introduction. And that is that the debate becomes that's the only issue. That's all that people are talking about. And all of the ordinary folk I talk to day in, day out around where I live, and it's a marginal constituency, incidentally, they are talking about the health service. They're talking about the economy. They're also talking about the size of the state, what government can and can't do. And I think that if Rishi digs into that and remembers that Liz Truss wasn't completely bonkers, some of the stuff that Liz and Kwasi were talking about was positive. And as the Telegraph said shortly after that, we need to have a debate within the Conservative Party about what the Tory party actually stands for. Starmer's going to say time and time again, it's New Labour. It's not New Labour as in Tony Blair and Charles Clarke and John Reid, but he claims it's purged itself of anti-Semitism and all sorts of other things, and it's a new product now. I'm not at all sure that's true. I'm not sure that Rishi, if you cornered him, as I tried to in Manchester, could define for you what the Conservative Party is this year, right now. That's why Reform UK is doing so well, because they've got a lot of the clothing that the Tories comfortably wore back in the Thatcher era. And if you read what Rishi said in his May's lecture, and if you look at some of what Liz Truss was saying, you might get a little bit closer to what a lot of folk who used to support the Conservative Party want the Conservative Party to be talking about again.
Just one final one with you, Al. What we're not going to be seeing at any TV debates is going to be Nigel Farage, because he's decided not to stand as a candidate. I think that could have been a concern for all of the politicians, because Nigel is I think, you know, a good natural performer in that kind of environment, isn't he? So he's going to be missing from any leadership debates if we do have them.
Yeah, that is true, and he's not a leader of a party. And it'd be interesting to know whether Mr. Tice would be invited to one of them. And I think that one of the things I've said to a lot of people about when I joined GBNews, I mean, I knew of Nigel. I didn't know him intimately. He wasn't a mate of mine. He became a mate of mine. And what I discovered was that Nigel Farage has a much broader hinterland than simply Brexit and UKIP and stuff like that. He's got strongly held views on a whole range of issues. And he's very articulate and very intelligent on many of them. So it would be a shame. But I think the other thing that's been observed is absolutely true, is that Reform and Farage, who's going to be campaigning for them, will take votes for sure from the Conservatives, but they'll also take votes from Labour. That's why Boris did so well and why the Red Wall tumbled down.
Look, Alistair, thank you very, very much. And it is such a pleasure to be able to chat to you again here and to have your energy and your vigour and everything on this show. So thank you very much, my good man. You take care. I'll see you soon. All right, that's Alistair Stewart there. What a man. What a mighty fine man.
And anytime, seriously, anytime at all, as I've said to your producers and to the bosses, I love elections. I've got a thing about them, and I'm very happy to give my 2 pence if anybody thinks it's worth it. Yeah. But to you and the whole team and your producers, you've been brilliant looking after me. Big thank you, and good night to people who are kind enough to be watching and listening.
Wow, all the best, Al. Take care. All right, well, look, coming up, Jeremy Corbyn will stand as an independent candidate after being booted out of the Labour Party, so he's finally been evicted from Labour.
We will assert our rights. That's why I'm standing to be an independent candidate for the people of Islington North.
Well, how much of a problem could he prove to be for Keir Starmer? Because I don't think he's just going to be campaigning in Islington North, is he? Novara Media journalist Michael Walker gives his take on this political divorce that's got everybody talking. But first, well, as Starmer is adding tuition fees now, apparently, to his endless list of policy U-turns, how can we trust anything the Labour Party promises? Their Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Haigh is here to explain all right after the break.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. This weekend it's going to be a bit of a mixed bank holiday. The driest weather expected on Saturday for most of us. Will turn a bit more unsettled as the weekend goes on. But through this evening, the pressure pattern really settles down, and that will set us up for a much drier and colder night to come tonight. There are areas of cloud and rain we've seen across northern areas will slowly drift northwards through the next few hours, and these clearer skies across the south will become more widespread, pushing into parts of southern Scotland by the morning. There's a chance of some mist and fog across some southern counties, and it's going to be a fresh start. As I say, temperatures could be down as low as 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Wales, southern areas of England as well. But it will warm up fairly quickly as the sun will shine first thing. We could see some sunshine first thing across the northeast of Scotland, where we're sheltered from that more southerly wind. Thicker cloud, though, further south and west. Still some drizzly rain, but I think things will improve through the day here. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it will be a dry and bright start, but some mist and fog may allow some drizzly rain. Notice, though, we do have this area of quite persistent rain moving into the south and east. That's moving in from parts of Europe, and that could bring some very heavy rain to eastern areas potentially. So a bit of a wet day is on the cards for eastern areas of England. Just some areas. Actually, most of us should stay dry through the day on Saturday, and it's going to feel much warmer than it has done today. Highs of around 22 degrees in the south, closer to 19 degrees across the north. But under the cloud, it's going to be a bit of a disappointing day. Things turn much more unsettled on Sunday. Bands of showery rain will push north and eastwards through the day. Some more persistent rain for northern areas, heavy, possibly thundery downpours across many central and southern areas, and that could bring some localised disruption, perhaps some flooding and spray on the roads, and it will likely stay unsettled into the half-term week.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Christys tonight. We are on GB News. Now, Keir Starmer is coming under ever-increasing scrutiny, as one would expect. We're in an election campaign, which means that his infamous U-turns are now being highlighted. Look, shall we remind ourselves of some of those U-turns? Just off the top of my head, we've got the old net zero green pledge, his support for Jeremy Corbyn, Angela Rayner. She was in, then she was out, then she was back in again, who he also tried to bin off again back in 2021, not to mention his plans for nationalisation, ending NHS outsourcing, scrapping the House of Lords, and now the rest of the media seem to be cottoning on. He was skewered to an extent over his previous promise to abolish university tuition fees after his shadow education secretary refused to rule out actually increasing them.
You've got to make some pretty difficult choices.
So long term, you will return to a pledge to abolish tuition fees?
No, we're now looking at alternatives to that because I don't think we can leave it. So we have to look at alternatives to that.
Well, here now to presumably defend her boss is Labour Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Haigh. Louise, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. There is an issue when it comes to Keir Starmer and trustworthiness, isn't there? All of those screeching U-turns I've just rattled off. How can anyone trust a word he says?
Well, I don't recognise some of the so-called U-turns that were just in your list there, but let me address the issue of tuition fees, because Keir Starmer did indicate when he stood to be Labour Party leader over 4 years ago that he wanted to abolish tuition fees. Since then, we've obviously had the disastrous mini-budget of Liz Truss, which crashed the economy. And since then, we've seen inflation soaring, interest rates having to be raised, and working people have been really badly hit. So we know, and your viewers will know very well, the implications and the consequences of when governments make unfunded spending commitments or unfunded tax cuts. And because the economy has been so badly damaged, and because public finances are in such a poor state since Keir made that initial ambitious pledge, then we're not able to make it. And it's really important that as we go into, we are crystal clear about the promises that we intend to make and intend to keep. And that is really important for trust in politics. I was out on the doors today, actually, in Grimsby, and I spoke to a woman who hadn't voted since 2010 when she voted for the Lib Dems, who promised.
Oh, I think we might have lost her there, unfortunately. That's Louise's connection appears to have dropped off. Oh, we'll just try and work to get her back. Something that is worth noting, though, is a bit of a headache for Sir Keir Starmer. Now, he is saying he's a Change Labour Party. In fact, he's standing on a banner that says change, isn't he? But Jeremy Corbyn has today been evicted from the Labour Party. He is, well, he's coming out swinging, isn't he? He's just going to stand as an independent. We can hear from the former Labour leader now.
I was first elected to Parliament for Islington North in 1983. And in all those years, we, the community, have had many, many campaigns. I believe in democracy. I want our political parties to be democratic. But members of Islington North Labour have been denied the right to choose their own candidate. And alongside that, the community as a whole has been disempowered because of that. So we have to stand up. We have to stand up and say, we're not taking this anymore. We will assert our rights. That's why I'm standing to be an independent candidate for the people of Islington North.
Very pleased to see the Shadow Transport Secretary is back with us. It's time to get rid of Diane Abbott now, then, is it, as well?
Well, look, Diane Abbott is in an independent process, and that is being considered over the next few days, and the Labour Party said that they will respond to that imminently.
Yeah, what do you make of it, though? Do you think we should get rid of her?
Well, look, Diane said something that was completely unacceptable in The Guardian. She's been going through an independent process, and it's right that it should be dealt with in that way. But she's been a trailblazer for lots of particularly young women of colour throughout the Labour movement for longer than I've been alive. So I think it would be a really sad way if this is how her parliamentary career ended.
Is it a concern now to have Jeremy Corbyn outside the tent even more than he already was? Because he won't just be campaigning in Islington North. I mean, he could well be having a pop at Keir Starmer's seat, backing the candidate who's standing against him there as an independent. He could well... I mean, he's friends, actually, apparently, with Liam Mohammed, who's standing against West Streeting, for example, and the candidate as well, Ahmed Yaqub, who is running in Birmingham Ladywood, I believe, against Shabana Mahmood. So he could be a force for bad for the Labour Party. Are you worried?
Well, look, Keir Starmer removed Jeremy Corbyn as a Labour MP because of the disgraceful things he said about anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and because of his record as Labour leader in response to the EHRC inquiry and findings on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. It was right that Keir Starmer did that, and it's right that he shouldn't be a candidate at this general election. We'll take on every constituency and every vote, regardless of who our opponents are, and I'm confident that under Keir Starmer's changed Labour Party, we can win back the trust right across the country.
OK, and Keir Starmer was up in Scotland, wasn't he, today? And that is going to be a big, big area for Labour. And actually... it's funny how things work out in politics, isn't it? The swings and the twists and the turns. I mean, Scotland could actually really be what hands Labour the keys to Downing Street, couldn't it?
Well, I think the changed context in Scotland is extraordinary in such a short period of time. And you're absolutely right. A general election victory for us across the UK is absolutely required that we make progress in Scotland. I think from my own campaigning up there in the by-election that we had last year, and from speaking to colleagues in Scottish Labour, the real feeling on the ground is that they're absolutely sick to the back teeth of two incompetent governments, one in Holyrood and one in Westminster. And the desire for Scotland, as it is in the rest of the UK, is for change after 14 years of chaos and failure under the Conservatives.
Just very lastly with you, David Lammy's been quite outspoken about Benjamin Netanyahu. There is a concern that a vote for Labour might be a vote to make an enemy of Israel. If you back the ICC, easy for me to say, when they say that if they say that they want to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, presumably we would have to divest from Israel as a whole. It will be a massive foreign policy shift. Do you think that's wise from Labour?
Well, look, being a friend of Israel and the absolute right for Israel to exist doesn't mean that you're a friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, who is an incredibly divisive politician who has undeniably behaved in an appalling way in this war. And it is right that we support the independent...
Do you think he's a war criminal?
Well, the ICC and the ICJ have obviously made very clear to the Israeli government that they must not proceed with the offensive in Rafah, and then that would break international law. And it's right, when we say that Israel and all other state actors have to abide by international law, it's right that there should be a system in place in order to protect and uphold that. And that system is the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. So those independent institutions must absolutely be respected.
All right, look, can I just say thank you very much for coming on the show this evening. Great to have you on, and hopefully we'll chat to you again over the course of the next 6 weeks. That's Louise Haigh there, who is Labour's Shadow Transport Secretary. Right, I've got a lot coming your way. The climate crisis, that's shaping up to be a key election issue. That's all landed today. Should the parties row back on their net zero promises? That's my take at 10. And who is Steve Bannon, former Trump advisor, talking about here?
Gutless and feckless, and we're unclubbable, and we're out of it, OK?
But next, look who's back and ready to take the fight to Keir Starmer.
We will assert our rights. That's why I'm standing to be an independent candidate for the people of...
But yes, what impact will the return of their former leader have on the Labour Party? You heard a little bit of a taster for it. I'm going to talk about it in more detail now with Novara Media's Michael Walker. Stay tuned.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GBNews' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, England fans have got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, the climate has emerged as today's key battleground at the general election. Will the party that moves further away from net zero do better? I'm going to debate that shortly. But first, yes, some big election news. Sir Keir Starmer has now officially expelled the former leader and supposedly friend, Jeremy Corbyn, from the Labour Party after he announced that he will stand as an independent against Labour in Islington North. So the Labour Party has shortlisted Sem Moema, who's a member of the London Assembly, apparently, and Praful Nargund, who's an Islington councillor, in the contest to be the party's candidates. Constituency where Mr Corbyn holds currently a 26,188 vote majority. Keir Starmer was playing down any issues here, though.
Well, look, that's a matter for Jeremy. He's obviously made his mind up about that. We will have an excellent Labour candidate in Islington North, as we've got excellent Labour candidates across the country.
Yeah, so there he is, basically saying, look, everything's absolutely fine. This might be a fiery campaign and likely to be a difficult one for Labour to win. Apparently 98% of attenders at a local Labour Party meeting backed a motion thanking Jeremy Corbyn for his commitment and service to the people. Joining me now is contributing editor at Novara Media and Corbyn ally Michael Walker. Michael, look, great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. I think it's a big problem for Labour because Corbyn's not just going to be in Islington North. He's going to be out and about. He's going to be in places like West Streeting seat, I imagine. Bethnal Green as well, where you've got a couple of people going up against the serving Labour MP there. I mean, this could be a huge headache.
I mean, I think Keir Starmer will be thinking about it in two ways. So on the one hand, I don't think he minds having a public battle with Jeremy Corbyn. He spent a lot of his leadership essentially trying to distance himself from him, to the extent that I think Labour have rejected a lot of quite popular policies because they're associated with him. So water nationalisation, for example, I think people probably would back that, but Labour are sort of scared to do anything that looks like 2017 or 2019. At the same time, this does sort of continue to raise the question of trustworthiness and duplicity. Obviously, Keir Starmer is someone who tried to make this guy Prime Minister 5 years ago and now is, dismissing him, will be campaigning against him. So two ways of looking at this. I think Jeremy Corbyn is probably the only independent who has a serious chance of winning in his constituency.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because Keir Starmer, his own seat, I wonder how safe that is, because you've got Daniel Feinstein standing against him. Presumably presumably Jeremy Corbyn might turn up there as well. So you could end up with this bizarre situation where Jeremy Corbyn is campaigning alongside the guy who's running against Keir Starmer. Is Keir Starmer safe at this election?
He's called Andrew Feinstein.
Sorry, apologies.
He's a very impressive man, actually. So he was an MP with the ANC, so sort of an ally of Nelson Mandela. He was in the South African Parliament, and a Jewish man. So I've spoken to this gentleman a number of times, and he's sort of very frustrated with how he feels anti-Semitism was weaponized and how sort of Jews who are critical of Israel, like himself, have been sort of dismissed and alienated from the party. So a very interesting guy, very interesting arguments. My guess is that in that particular seat, Keir Starmer's going to be fine. I mean, Keir Starmer has lots of name recognition, a lot more than Andrew Feinstein. And I do think, people really do want to see the back of the Tories. So I don't think you will see this sort of huge momentum to have Keir Starmer not win in his own seat. Jeremy Corbyn, I think, is a different sort of issue. I think there are lots of people who would like to see a Labour majority because they want to see the back of the Conservatives, but would also like to see sort of Jeremy Corbyn given his due respect. And, they wouldn't mind Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister, but having a little bit of a nuisance behind him, because I think many people see, and especially people in Islington North actually, see the way that Jeremy Corbyn has been treated as particularly unfair.
I wonder if Diane Abbott's next, though. Very, very quickly, Michael, do you think she's gone?
From what I'm hearing frontbenchers say, I think they might keep her in. I think they might see that sort of kicking out Diane Abbott, the first black woman elected to Parliament, would be a step too far.
All right, look, Michael, thank you very much. Have a great weekend. That's Michael Walker there, the contributing editor at Novara Media. Yes, Andrew Feinstein, apologies, who is standing against Keir Starmer in his seat. Coming up, with reports suggesting that Brexit deal architect Lord Frost will be banned from standing for the Tories at the next election. Is the party guilty of now abandoning true blue Conservatives? Boris supporters, Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burkhardt, who used to advise Theresa May, he's going to be on this show shortly. But next, the climate is emerging as a key election battleground. Which party cares more or less about the climate? And do you care?
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. This weekend it's going to be a bit of a mixed bank holiday. The driest weather expected on Saturday for most of us. Will turn a bit more unsettled as the weekend goes on. But through this evening, the pressure pattern really settles down, and that will set us up for a much drier and colder night to come tonight. There are areas of cloud and rain we've seen across northern areas will slowly drift northwards through the next few hours, and these clearer skies across the south will become more widespread, pushing into parts of southern Scotland by the morning. There's a chance of some mist and fog across some southern counties, and it's going to be a fresh start. As I say, temperatures could be down as low as 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Wales, southern areas of England as well. But it will warm up fairly quickly as the sun will shine first thing. We could see some sunshine first thing across the northeast of Scotland, where we're sheltered from that more southerly wind. Thicker cloud, though, further south and west. Still some drizzly rain, but I think things will improve through the day here. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it will be a dry and bright start, but some mist and fog may allow some drizzly rain. Notice, though, we do have this area of quite persistent rain moving into the south and east. That's moving in from parts of Europe, and that could bring some very heavy rain to eastern areas potentially. So a bit of a wet day is on the cards for eastern areas of England. Just some areas, actually most of us, should stay dry through the day on Saturday, and it's going to feel much warmer than it has done today. Highs of around 22 degrees in the south, closer to 19 degrees across the north. But under the cloud, it's going to be a bit of a disappointing day. Things turn much more unsettled on Sunday. Bands of showery rain will push north and eastwards through the day. Some more persistent rain for northern areas, heavy, possibly thundery downpours across many central and southern areas, and that could bring some localised disruption, perhaps some flooding and spray on the roads, and it will likely stay unsettled into the half-term week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. I've got a big hour of telly coming your way tonight.
Prime Minister, we are just yards away from where the Titanic was built and designed. Are you captaining a sinking ship going into this election?
Should Rishi Sunak sack his advisors? The party's over for Michael Gove. It's the Tories versus Labour on the environment, and...
Here's Starmer and the opportunity-destroying, aspiration-hating Labour Party.
Boris-backing Conservatives are allegedly blocked from standing. What's going on? Also...
I grew up working class. I've been fighting all my life, and I won't stop now.
Is Sir Keir Starmer lying about being working class? I've got tomorrow's front pages with broadcasting royalty John Sargent, Apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju and political commentator Alex Armstrong. Plus, who is ex-Trump advisor Steve Bannon talking about here?
We're gutless and feckless, and we're unclubbable, and we're proud of it, okay?
Get ready, Britain, here we go. Do voters actually care about net zero? Next.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Andrea Leadsom has become the latest MP to announce that she will not be standing at the general election. In a letter to the Prime Minister, the Health Minister said she had come to the decision after careful reflection, but did not go into further detail. Comes shortly after Michael Gove posted his resignation letter, saying it's time for a new generation to lead. 78 Tory MPs are now leaving Parliament, a post-war record-breaking exodus. Rishi Sunak was greeted by a group of pro-Palestine protesters as he visited a college in the West Midlands this afternoon. The situation was described as tense as the PM arrived at South Staffordshire College in Cannock, the last stop on his UK tour. Police officers formed a guard for Mr Sunak as his entry to the college was delayed and he was quickly ushered into the building as the crowd surged around him. Whilst inside, activists with banners and flags chanted "Free Palestine." Labour has ruled out any deals with the SNP after the election, even in the event of a hung parliament. Sir Keir Starmer has been campaigning in the east of Glasgow today, which is one of the seats he's hoping to take from John Swinney's party. Sir Keir said the SNP's only ambition is to break up the UK, and there would be absolutely no deal with the Scottish nationalists. GB News can reveal that more than 10,000 Channel migrants have crossed illegally to the UK so far this year. The milestone figure was reached today after another 154 people arrived in Dover, having crossed in 3 small boats this morning. Another boat arrived this evening with 53 people on board. It's a blow to Rishi Sunak on this second full day of election campaigning after he promised that his government would stop the boats. The former boss of the Post Office has been accused of living in La La Land over her role in the Horizon scandal. Paula Venables, again, became emotional on her 3rd day of giving evidence. She admitted making mistakes and accepted that there was no one else to blame, but claimed that she didn't know why important information didn't reach her. Sam Stein KC described that as absolute rubbish and suggested that Ms Venables had failed to ask the right questions because the risk was too great. And the documentary filmmaker Morgan Spurlock has died at the age of 53. He came to prominence with his Oscar-nominated film Super Size Me in 2004, which tracked his health while he ate nothing but McDonald's for a month. The film was credited with prompting a broad conversation about how fast food and rising obesity was impacting society. Mr Spurlock passed away in New York due to complications from cancer. Well, if you'd like the latest stories, you can sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Back now to Patrick.
The key battle lines are starting to be drawn for the election. We had immigration yesterday.
Immigration figures, and they are down by 10%.
It's actually been around a 50% increase in work migration.
Well, today it's the environment. So both parties are putting the environment at the centre of their campaigns, but for different reasons, and you will have a choice about what you prefer. The line from the Tories is this.
We prioritised energy security and your family finances over environmental dogma in our approach to net zero.
So the Prime Minister claims he's rowed back on net zero, he's allowing new oil and gas licences, he's anti-ULEZ, and today that announcement is that the Tories will make it harder for customers to be ripped off by price comparison websites, and they will stop being clobbered with bills for thousands and thousands of pounds from dodgy smart meters. So that's what the Tories are saying. The line from them is quite simple, actually. We are not eco-fanatics, we're pro using our own oil and gas, and we will make your bills cheaper. What Labour are coming at it from the other angle. They are planning on making climate change a key focus of their election campaign. They think that net zero is a massive priority. They think the climate crisis is something most voters really care about. The Tories can't be trusted on that. Just look, they will say, at the way that they've allowed your rivers to be pumped full of raw sewage. They've rowed back on the £28 billion Green Pledge, but they've settled on a figure of around £15 billion. They want to set up Great British Energy, which Ed Miliband says will help Britain take back control of its destiny.
Our first step is to set up Great British Energy, a publicly owned clean energy company by and for our citizens.
And there's even a bizarre piece in The Guardian today about how Rishi Sunak standing in the rain on Downing Street is a visible sign of climate change. But the big issue for Labour is cost. They say renewables are cheaper and that will bring your bills down. But in the short term, they appear to be putting their eggs in the basket of people want to fight climate change and they won't mind if it costs them a bit of money. The battle lines on the environment have been drawn. Whose side are you on? But let's get the thoughts now of my panel. BBC former and ITV political chief John Sargent. I've also got the political commentator and apprentice finalist Joanna Jarju and broadcaster extraordinaire Alex Armstrong. John, do you think that people really care about the environment at this election? Because the Labour Party really think everyone does.
Well, no, I think if you ask people, do you care about climate change and should we take action against it, of course they will say yes, absolutely. But what they don't want is anything which will upset their own standard of living. And that, of course, is the problem. It's like so many things in the public sector. Do you want services to improve? Yeah. Are you prepared to pay more tax? Well, I'm not sure about that.
Exactly that.
So what you're getting and what's becoming more and more apparent is that the year zero target of 3050, which seems such a long way away, which we can all gently agree that's going to be all right. Now it looks it's getting closer and closer, and people realise that electric cars are not very popular. They've suddenly said, we're not going to give you money for a new boiler, and they'll think, oh, this is getting a bit tricky. And then people get worried because they're worried about, we haven't got any more money.
The line that the Tories are trying to take now is that if you vote Conservative, we will try to make use of some of the stuff that we've got resources-wise under our own feet or under the sea. We will do our best to make sure that you don't get ripped off by a dodgy smart meter or comparison website. And we're anti things like ULEZ, and we're in no great rush to hit net zero. Labour appear to be saying, no, this is a climate emergency. Most people, they would say, would agree with that. Sceptical, but and we're gonna do what we can, and we're gonna try and use renewables as a way of making sure your bills don't go up. The Tories are going to say your bills will go up under Labour.
Well, that's true, isn't it? We know that renewables cost more. We know that energy costs more. What really matters to people is how much money they've got left in their bank at the end of the day. It's the economy, stupid. That's the famous saying, right? And this really shows to me that Labour are out of touch with ordinary working class people who don't want any more of this shoved down their throats. They've already been paying out of their backsides for green incentives the last few years, and the government have been putting incentive after incentive into business, and it's not really made too much difference. We're also one of the best countries in the world when it comes to carbon emissions. So how much more do we need to give?
Joanna, I wonder if Keir Starmer's making a mistake putting climate right at the centre of his supposed manifesto as and when we get it.
I don't think he is, actually, and I think that when we get to, full pelt election period and debates and things like that, I think that he's going to frame it as hitting two birds with one stone, or even three birds with one stone, in the sense that, investing in a green economy or investing in green energy is more likely to create jobs. And we know that we've got a real productivity issue in this country. So it's about being able to attract things like private investment into, the traditional industrial heartlands. That is actually probably will be real levelling up, especially for some areas in the north. So I think that when you frame it like that, and also taking into account that in the last couple of years, we've seen time and time again that planning and long-term thinking in this country has been a real problem. And it's never going to be the right time, and it's always going to sting to an extent, especially when you've got something that's new. So at what point do we do it?
I mean, we saw it was the Uxbridge by-election we saw, where it was Boris Johnson's old seat, and a lot of people thought it was going to go Labour, and they made that the ULEZ by-election, and most people in that seat decided they didn't want you, Les, and so they voted for the Tory candidate there. And I just wonder if that's what the Tories are thinking here. If they can come out and say, look, we think net zero is a bit of a fad and we don't really care about that, they might actually play quite well.
Yeah, oh no, the chances are that particular thing, we're going to do it all and it won't hurt you too much and it's all going to be wonderful and we agree with this. But I think people might see through this and realise that if you're not careful, you will get these events. I mean, how frightening was it, that aircraft falling so many thousand feet?
Yes.
He was saying there are more of these things coming.
Well,
I think, you know...
convinced that's climate.
They said it was climate change. No, they said...
but you know, what I think they would be worried about...
Let me know, before you stop, otherwise you attack me and you'll be laughing and people say I got it wrong. In terms of more incidents involving turbulence in East Asia, the chances are that has affected...
I just wanted to make the point. If you look at London, if you look at the mayoral election, right, Susan Hall got 33%. That's a 12% difference from where the Tories are polling nationally. That would be a big difference in the number of seats. And that you really have to look at why people were voting for Susan Hall. And a lot of it in the suburbs was to stop ULEZ.
Yeah.
And so if you make this all about ULEZ, and the Tory party are able to say we're going to roll out, that Labour's going to roll out ULEZ in every major city, then all of a sudden it becomes a battleground.
But I don't think that they'll frame it like that. I think that they'll focus on energy security and they'll focus on the creation of jobs. I don't think that they will focus on the tiny things. I think they'll know that obviously that's a quite a defensive thing, and they'll learn from that.
The issue with that is that then it's easy to come unstuck because you're promising things on the never there. You're saying, all right, it might come, we might get this amount of jobs, renewables might save us this amount of money. It's stuff we don't already have. Whereas if the Tories decide to say, we know there's oil there, we know there's gas there, we're going to frack, we know all of these things, then just maybe that might actually play a little bit to their base. I wonder whether, Alex, the Tories have been helped out a bit on this, but some quite hysterical climate stuff recently from The Guardian, which was linked, by the way, to this article. It was in this article where they were saying Keir Starmer was going to put the climate at the heart of his manifesto, where it said that Rishi Sunak standing outside in the rain on Downing Street was a visible sign of climate change. And you think, well, hang on a minute, if Keir Starmer's appealing to that kind of mindset, I think most people find that laughable.
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought it was ridiculous, isn't it? This is Britain. It rains most of the year. I mean, you carry an umbrella with you everywhere. And quite frankly, I think I put a tweet out saying this is just British people getting on with their daily lives. I mean, Rishi Sunak delivering a speech.
Barbecue weather.
It's barbecue weather. It's T-shirt weather.
Yeah, but
I'd be out of my shorts.
It was a terrible mess, that.
Yeah.
And obviously, he didn't work it out. He should have either waited...
Oh, I mean, you know, there's...
got someone with...
No, but
there was no way else they could do
about the sewage, the climate stuff, you know, the effects on our wildlife and things like that. And obviously we see these incidents across the world as well as in Britain in terms of even flooding.
Well, Guardian readers will have...
Pollution is a separate issue. Of course, people all agree on that. The problem is climate change is just so much more in the future, and you've got to do... That's where the problem is, getting people to concentrate on the fact that it is an emergency.
Very, very quickly, we've now had 78 Conservative MPs quitting. Michael Gove quit a couple of hours ago. Andrea Leadsom's just quit. We are going to have to be very, very quick for this. But, Alex, you're shaking your head there and said Michael Gove's gone.
Yeah, it's the rats fleeing the ship, isn't it? It really is. They're out on exodus at the moment. And I think it's damning on Rishi Sunak, if anybody. They're leaving his premiership. They're saying we don't want to run an election underneath you.
Have you seen anything like this before, John? We literally haven't seen anything like this before. But
this really is. It's. I'm afraid it's the Conservatives demonstrating once again how they can't simply work together. So give them an excuse to go off in different directions, and you feel they don't even think for a moment. They just say, right, off we go. I want to do this. Well, instead of thinking, what can we do for our party?
It also shows how spineless they are, because I think a lot of them have got so used to being in power for 14 years that they can't even stomach, you know, trying to do their best for their constituents and actually representing some people who I'm sure, you know, do support them.
Says the rumours on social media are that it's bad news for the current editor of The Times, because they think Michael Gove might be about to become the editor of The Times. But coming up, Keir Starmer, he's back, making claims about being working class.
I grew up working class. I've been fighting all my life, and I won't stop now.
Do you buy it? And does this working class stuff really matter to the voters? We debate that on top of all of tomorrow's front pages. But next, look, Conservative Minister Michael Gove has now stood down amid claims that the Tories are blocking true blue Conservatives pro-Boris candidates like David Frost from actually standing. Is this true, and how does the party react to this record-breaking MP exodus? I've got Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burghardt, former advisor to Theresa May, actually. He's going to try and answer some of those questions and more very shortly. Stay tuned.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change, you've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys on GB News. Look, still to come, I will have the very first of tomorrow's front pages for you, which are landing in thick and fast as we speak. But first, GB News' Christopher Hope exclusively revealed this morning that the architect of Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, Lord Frost, has been banned from standing as a Tory candidate in the general election. Frost, described as the Great Frost by Boris Johnson, is a low-tax Tory with traditional Conservative values, and many fear this is exactly why the party are choosing to abandon him. Rishi Sunak has since denied that Lord Frost has been blocked from standing for Parliament, with friends of him saying that the Candidates Committee is set to review this case again on the 29th of May. But concerns have been raised over the Tories cleansing themselves of what many people regard as being actual Conservatives, with former diplomat Aman Bagal last month accusing Conservatives Conservative campaign headquarters of a stitch-up, criticising their candidate selection process. Overall, really, the concern is that they're going to shove the party full of wets, and that's what's going to be left after the general election. So, as the Tories reportedly ban Lord Frost from standing, what is really going on? I'm very pleased to say that Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burghardt joins me now. Alex, look, thank you very, very much. First and foremost, Michael Gove went a couple of hours ago. Andrea Leadsome's just gone. Is it rats leaving a sinking ship?
I don't think so at all. I don't think that's a fair way of talking about it. You want to understand that some people have done a speech in Parliament in really difficult circumstances, and I can understand that they might have done enough. Yeah, it's perfectly natural after a long stint in power that some people want to get off and retire or pursue other interests. And we're losing some good colleagues who've done a service for the party, but I'm confident we're going to get some new candidates as well.
OK, all right. Look, I'll tell you what, Alex, I'm very, very sorry about this. What we're going to need to do, there's a little bit of an issue with your microphone. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to try and get that sorted behind the scenes. I'll just run through a couple of things. So Michael Gove has now stood down. He said he's not, after 20 years, he's not going to seek re-election. Strong rumours that he might go and be the next editor of The Times. I think that's possibly quite bad news, and maybe even quite disrespectful, actually, for the current editor of The Times. But you add that to the 78, I think, now, other Tory MPs that have stood down. And it does paint a picture of a group of people that weren't necessarily up for the fight. When it comes to people like David Frost, and we are seeing this now around the country, there are people who are regarded as being, quote-unquote, proper Conservatives. People will debate what that means, but that might mean pro-Brexit, low tax, quite strong when it comes to immigration, all of that stuff, who are being blocked or not selected to stand at certain seats. Now, that could mean that if the Conservative Party do suffer a bit of a wipeout, who will some of the people be left? Who will emerge from the ashes of what remains? And there is a fear among some quarters that that could just be very centrist, very wishy-washy, kind of Lib Dems, basically. And that's what the Conservative Party could end up with. There's a lot going on here when it comes to all of that, though, really, and especially the bad start that Rishi Sunak has made to their campaign. It would be one thing ditching people like Lord Frost. It would be one thing with Michael Gove going if you felt as though Rishi Sunak had got off to a rip-roaring start. But I don't need to remind you all that it started with him getting absolutely soaked to the bone outside Downing Street with Things Can Only Get Better, which I think might now actually be at number 3 or 4 in the charts, blaring over him. And he's been on this whistle-stop tour of the United Kingdom, and that's not gone particularly well. He's offended the Welsh, in a way, over the fact that they didn't qualify for the Euros. He was pictured next to an exit sign on an aeroplane. He was at the Titanic Quarter in Northern Ireland, wasn't he? Which led to him being asked questions about being the captain of a sinking ship. I mean, whoever is behind the advice that Rishi Sunak is getting seriously needs to give their head a wobble, don't they? And then he got hounded by the pro-Palestine brigade in the Midlands. I mean, it is actually, I think, quite a terrible start. I'm going to reintroduce my panel now. So we do have with us John Sargent, the stalwart veteran. Well, you probably won't thank me for calling him that political powerhouse. We've also got Joanna Jarju and Alex Armstrong. Look, what I was about to grill our friend there from the Conservative Party on was about whether or not the Conservatives are actually purging or refusing to have proper Conservative standing. Alex, I'll start with you on this. What do you make of the suggestion that Lord Frost has been blocked from standing as a candidate? Surely it would be an asset to the Tories.
Well, he'd be a massive asset. I mean, look at his contributions during Brexit. I mean, we wouldn't have got through them without Lord Frost. And to see that he is essentially being shunned by the party is absolutely disgraceful. I thought the Tories were meant to be this broad church, but it seems, even including their own members, that they're not inviting them to stand in seats whilst they have an exodus of MPs. It's absolutely bonkers. I don't know what's going on at CCHQ, but they really need to get their act together, frankly.
Yeah, John, have you ever seen a calamitous start to an election like this? There was the rain, there was the Welsh football incident, there's the Titanic incident, there's being pictured with an exit sign. It's got the whiff of death about it, has it?
Yeah, you get a bit of that. I mean, people take time to get into an election, so you often get this rather shambolic start. simply because people are thinking, first of all, about the legislation that's still going through Parliament for the last day. They're thinking about other things. Labour at least have had the advantage that they know that this is the election they've got to prepare for, and they look better prepared. They look better organised.
I'm just because we are a bit pressed for time. Please stay where you are. I believe we might be able to reintroduce Cabinet Office Minister Alex Burghardt. Alex, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you very much for.
That's all right. Is this working now, Patrick?
For hustling for us. That sounds much better. Good stuff.
Fantastic.
Well, look, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to ask the same question. Is it like rats leaving a sinking ship?
No, not at all. And look, we've been in power for quite a long time. There are people. A lot of the people who are retiring have done like 20 years service, and it's been a pretty eventful, period in history. So I can quite understand why some people want to retire. Been some wonderful valedictory speeches today, people talking about all the things they've done. And I can also understand why some people would want to go off and, have a final phase in their career doing something else after they've done, decades worth of work in Parliament. I don't begrudge them that at all. But I also know that we're getting some very good new candidates as well, and I'm really looking forward to working with them.
Well, it's on that I would like to ask you about, because the big noise today was about Lord Frost supposedly being blocked from standing, and there's been rumblings of this kind of thing going on throughout. Is the Tory party really trying to shove itself full of wets, really?
No, I don't think so at all. And I've been told that David hasn't been banned from being a candidate in this election. I have asked about it specifically today. And I really like Frosty. I've worked with him, since he was first appointed by Boris. He's a really smart guy. He's a really good member of the House of Lords, and I hope to see him in the House of Commons one day. So I'm not worried about that. And it's certainly not the case that there aren't right-wing candidates coming forward. My friend Nick Timothy, who's been selected in Suffolk, is absolutely a right-winger. If you look at Charlie Dewhurst up in Yorkshire, or young Jamie McIver, who was selected in Hemel Hempstead the other day, these are Thatcherites. These are right-wing thinkers.
OK, look, it's been gaffe central for the Prime Minister so far. He managed to offend the Welsh about not qualifying for the Euros, was pictured next to an exit sign on a plane. He visited the Titanic Quarter in Northern Ireland, got hounded by the pro-Palestine mob in the Midlands, got soaking wet outside Downing Street. Who on earth is running this campaign?
Look, the Prime Minister is going to get through this campaign, and you just wait until the scrutiny starts on Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have had an easy ride over the past few years. They've managed to get to this position in the electoral cycle without telling anybody what their ideas are, what their policies are. And that scrutiny is going to come now. The British people will want answers before they go into the ballot box. And the Conservatives have policies and a plan. Keir Starmer doesn't believe in anything. He doesn't have any policies. He doesn't have a plan, and he's going to get found out.
You'll be able to tell us Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges then, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go on, then.
Oh, Patrick, you're such a mean man. It's been a long day.
Oh. Well, all right, people can make their own minds up about that. Halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting lists and stop the boats. On that last one, stopping the boats.
5 out of 5,
yeah. That's the 5. They're on the tip of your tongue. That stop the boats one, 10,000 people have entered the UK legally this year. If he's got any sense, he'll put leaving the ECHR in his manifesto, won't he, Alex?
I personally am very clear about this. I think if that's what we have to do to solve this problem, then that's what we need to do. And the bottom line is that we have to deliver for the British people on this. It's completely what they expect. But I'm not the guy writing the manifesto, but the Prime Minister's been clear. We'll do whatever it takes.
All right, Alex, look, thank you very much. And like I said as well, again, thank you for sorting out that microphone issue. It's great to have you on the show, and it's going to be a busy 6 weeks, so I hope to see you again. That's Alex Burghardt there, who's the Cabinet Office Minister, former advisor to Theresa May. Coming up, which party is winning the social media war? I'm going to show you some of the funniest clips that have been put out so far. It's quite good, actually, what's going on social media at the moment. Plus, who is Steve Bannon, the former Trump advisor, talking about here?
Gutless and feckless, and we're unclubbable, and we're proud of it, OK?
But next, it's the very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's see how they're dealing with this election campaign so far, shall we?
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update. This weekend is going to be a bit of a mixed bank holiday. The driest weather expected on Saturday for most of us. Will turn a bit more unsettled as the weekend goes on. But through this evening, pressure pattern really settles down, and that will set us up for a much drier and colder night to come tonight. There are areas of cloud and rain we've seen across northern areas will slowly drift northwards through the next few hours, and these clearer skies across the south will become more widespread, pushing into parts of southern Scotland by the morning. There's a chance of some mist and fog across some southern counties, and it's going to be a fresh start. As I say, temperatures could be down as low as 3 or 4 degrees across parts of Wales, southern areas of England as well. But it will warm up fairly quickly as the sun will shine first thing. We could see some sunshine first thing across the northeast of Scotland, where we're sheltered from that more southerly wind. Thicker cloud, though, further south and west. Still some drizzly rain, but I think things will improve through the day here. Elsewhere across much of England and Wales, it will be a dry and bright start, but some mist and fog may allow some drizzly rain. Notice, though, we do have this area of quite persistent rain moving into the south and east. That's moving in from parts of Europe, and that could bring some very heavy rain to eastern areas potentially. So a bit of a wet day is on the cards for eastern areas of England. Just some areas, actually most of us, should stay dry through the day on Saturday, and it's going to feel much warmer than it has done today. Highs of around 22 degrees in the south, closer to 19 degrees across the north. But under the cloud, it's going to be a bit of a disappointing day. Things turn much more unsettled on Sunday. Bands of showery rain will push north and eastwards through the day. Some more persistent rain for northern areas, heavy, possibly thundery downpours across many central and southern areas, and that could bring some localised disruption, perhaps some flooding and spray on the roads, and it will likely stay unsettled into the half-term week.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I have got the very first look at tomorrow's front pages for you. I'm starting with the Daily Mail. Boris, Starmer would be the most dangerous and left-wing Labour PM since the 1970s. This is... there we go. They've also got an exclusive on the front page. Shadow Chancellor makes a pledge to the Daily Mail readers. So nice balance there on the front of the Daily Mail. Rachel Reeves, I'll never play fast and loose with your money. So, OK, let's go to the Mirror. Now Gove quits Sunak's sinking ship. Tory stalwart abandons the Prime Minister to join the exodus of MPs standing down. Andrea Leadsom has also said she's not standing. Let's go to the Express. Now Gove quits. Minister's shock exit rocks Tories. So there we go. And let's go to the Times. Gove quits politics as more Tories stand down. Exodus of MPs, they say. New poll now puts Conservatives 22 points behind. So that's apparently the latest polling, according to the Times. So those are the first tranche of front pages. I've got my panel with me here. We've got John Sargent, the political guru. We've also got political commentator, apprentice finalist Joanna Jargia, a political commentator as well, Alex Armstrong. I mean, the Gove stuff, look, we've spoken about this, really, so I'm quite keen to just kind of crack on, because there's a couple of other election-related stories that I think are quite good. So the upcoming general election is being framed by some as this battle for support of Britain's working class. So the red wall turned blue back in 2019. Rishi Sunak could really do with their vote, but historic clips like this aren't helpful.
I have friends who are aristocrats, I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, working class, but not working class, but...
Yeah. Meanwhile, successful lawyer and former head of the CPS, Sir Keir Starmer, is desperate to try to convince the nation that he is working class.
My dad was a toolmaker, so he worked in a factory, and my mum was a nurse, but she was also, sadly, very ill, and so she couldn't work for very long.
It was tough going at times, and one of the things that helps me in the cost of living crisis we're going through now is knowing what it's like to struggle to make ends meet.
I grew up working class. I've been fighting all my life, and I won't stop now. I've felt the anxiety of a cost of living crisis before, and until your family can see the way out, I will fight for you.
Did you know his dad was a toolmaker? That's all well and good, though, isn't it? But do you actually know what working class means, Sir Keir?
Describe yourself as working class. Sir Keir, define working class.
No, working class is families that work for their living, earn their money through going out to work every day, not through other
Not
means.
middle classes do that?
Well, working class families have the ordinary hope to get on in life. I mean, this has been a story.
Middle classes have that
Yeah,
as
of course they do. Of course they do.
So what's the distinction?
That's a hard watch, isn't it? So, Alex, you actually dug Sir Keir Starmer out a bit for this. Do you think he is working class?
He's absolutely not working class. Look, his dad wasn't a toolmaker. His dad owned a tool-making factory. There's a huge difference between being a toolmaker and owning the factory in which you have employees that make the tools for you. Let's make that clear. He's also a multi-millionaire. He's worth at least 10 million already at the moment, right? Does that...
Is he really?
Yes, he is. He's a multi-millionaire.
Can't verify that. I can't verify that. But
I encourage people to go home and research themselves. He's a multi-millionaire. So for Keir Starmer to be planting himself out as this working-class hero is absolute nonsense.
So
go on, Joanna.
Go on, what if he's worth a few £1 million? I think that, I think I had this conversation with you in the green room a couple of weeks ago that, if you start off as working class and then, through social mobility...
He didn't start off as working class. His dad owned a factory,
hang on a minute,
Joanna.
Alex, how do you know that his dad didn't start off as a humble toolmaker and then, through social mobility and working hard...
But the question is Keir a working-class man? And his dad may have started off...
I think working class is about the values, and maybe his dad working in that environment as a toolmaker to begin with, potentially, and then owning the factory is actually very admirable.
Nonsense, Joanna. You know it's nonsense. I know you know it's nonsense.
When you compare it to Rishi Sunak, I think working class is about your values and being able to relate to normal people. And if between the two of them, Keir Starmer would be the closest thing to working class to Rishi Sunak. Come on.
Now, that may well be true. However, John, Keir Starmer is banging on about being working class, isn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, that's the mistake. I mean, you've got to be very careful. First of all, ever talking about yourself in the third person. It's for other people to judge. That's the first thing to say. The second thing is, working class is a very old-fashioned way of looking at the world, bosses and working class. It doesn't fit very well. People do go to work. The moment you start talking about it, you start saying, oh, well, and you're ending up by saying, wait a minute, if people like me, like you, all the rest of it, what are they saying? Can they connect with us? People of all sorts, because that's what they've got to do, and that's what a politician has got to do. So the idea that they sort of say, well, I'm really working class, and therefore I should win the election.
But this is it, because the left have taken, and the Labour Party themselves try to make everybody working class, because there's this aspiration now. They want people to feel, I guess, I'm working class hero and all this nonsense, but it's not. The Labour Party seems to represent more and more the wealthier people of the country. We saw back in Boris Johnson's last election that the working class have converted to conservative.
No, I don't think that's
because
true.
You're right, it is about values.
That's not true.
The working class are not woke. They're fed up with wokeness.
It's about the values.
They're the ones being punished the most by all these groups.
So you're saying that being working class is about values. What are those values?
Well, I think that it's about, being able to relate to the average person. We were talking before in the break about, does Keir Starmer versus Rishi Sunak, if you were to pick between the two, who knows how much is a loaf of bread and a pint of milk, which are the two? And And also, who is the closest? Just because his dad might have owned that factory doesn't mean people own businesses and they go down and then, you know, they have to kind of adjust their livelihoods. And I'm sure that he's maybe had some stories of that. And I think that it's completely different. And when you actually look at the pledges that Labour have made in terms of for working people, in terms of, you know, just the statements that they've made, Keir Starmer clearly, well, like,
but also,
rules
the other thing to bear in mind is that what you can't do is inherit experience. So the idea that it's all class, so what were your parents doing, where are you from, they don't tell you very much about the person.
Tell you what, the working class are voting for reform, I can guarantee you that.
All right, OK, well, there we go. Now, since the snap general election was announced earlier this week, both main parties have gone into overdrive on their social media campaigns, and they're not holding back. So here's Labour's best guess at what's filling Rishi Sunak's campaign diary.
Forward to all the football.
Not so much my bag. But...
Well, get people in.
No, but that's because you guys aren't in it.
Yeah, they're taking the mick, aren't they, really? But unsurprisingly, the Tories are hitting back with content like this. They are offering the many different boxes that Sir Keir Starmer comes in, all right? Eco-Keir, who comes with disposable views. Remain-Keir, with flip-flops included. Left-wing Keir, which costs you more. So there we go. That's the... those are the way that the social media campaigns are all going. The race for Downing Street is intensifying. I wonder who will win that social media war. It is definitely one to watch. Coming up, does anyone have sympathy for former Post Office boss Paula Venables, who cannot stop crying her eyes out, can she, at this inquiry? We debate that when I crown tonight's greatest Britain and Union jackass. But next, I've got some more front pages for you. I'll see you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
He's meeting his father, the King, for just the second time since his father's cancer diagnosis. Harry's going to an Invictus Games gig at St Paul's on Wednesday, and his father is hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace. Once they're all said and done, about 7 p.m, they are going to meet, apparently.
Yeah, that's
but
wonderful.
crucially not the Princess of Wales.
Well, I think it's a wonderful story, and obviously you would. If you're visiting the country, you haven't seen your dad and he's ill with cancer, of course you would go grab a Costa. Can't wait to see the pictures of them in Costa together, just having a little catch-up.
Do you know they might embrace?
I would hope so, but...
Do you know, I think it's really important that life's too short not to have a relationship with your family. I know too many people that aren't speaking, or they've fallen out because of money or whatever, and we're only on this earth for a very short time, and what a shame not to have a relationship with your own
haven't they?
son.
I mean, it's the trust issue that is really the problem here, and straight after this they're going to be heading off to Nigeria, and they're still involved in all of these sort of like commercial and media activities. If you don't have that trust there with your family, and you're responsible for breaking that trust down, it's not really, it's sort of on you, isn't it?
It's still mendable, though, I think, and we've all got people in our family that maybe we wouldn't trust with our bank details or something like that, so they can just not. You know, Charles shouldn't be going to Harry, guess what, you can't tell anyone. He's like, that's not what they're going to talk about, are they? They're not going to tell him anything.
The King is his father, but it's different, isn't it, if it's your brother, it's your sibling, whereas a father's probably perhaps more likely to be forgiving and to be wanting to sort of reunite. Do you think maybe it's going to be harder for him to mend that relationship with William and Catherine?
I think it's really, really hard. I mean, I can't see how they can... But they need to get in a room together. They need to speak. The only way that you are going to break down barriers when it comes to relationships is by facing it and speaking about it.
You say life's too short, but some would say, well, that's a perfect reason not to tolerate any nonsense.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I've got the final round of front pages for you. So we start with the Eye. Gove quits as Sunak hit by record exodus of Tory MPs. So Michael Gove was the 77th Tory MP to abandon Parliament. That is now up to 78 because Andrea Leadsome's gone as well. We move over to The Guardian. UN top court orders Israel to halt assault on Rafah. So the United Nations top court yesterday ordered which will be today technically, ordered Israel to halt its assault on the southern Gaza city of Rafah. They've also got a thing here, Tory donors pour £2.5 million into key seats. It was pretty surprising if they didn't, really, the Tory donors, but anyway. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Inheritance tax against Tory values, says Hunt. Right now, this is interesting. So, day one of the election campaign, there was a point of difference between the two parties on immigration, and that was mainly because we had the net migration figures. Today, the key point of difference was on the environment. We spoke about that at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. It looks as though maybe tomorrow's one could be a bit about inheritance tax. That's according to Jeremy Hunt. The Chancellor says that death duties are profoundly anti-conservative and pledges tax breaks for the middle classes. I mean, look, I don't know if he's got it in him, Jeremy Hunt, but it would be interesting to see a Tory manifesto that scrapped inheritance tax, wouldn't it? So I wonder whether or not we might be talking about that tomorrow. But to an outsider's take, I want to deal with that first. I'm going to deal with that first. The inheritance tax thing. Do you think if he's got any sense, John, he should scrap inheritance tax? Oh, yeah, no, it's good, good crowd pleaser. Well worth doing it, well worth talking about it, particularly if you don't have to pay for it. Put it in the manifesto. Nice thing to have, easy to promise, much harder to practice, and you have to pay for it. But I mean, oh yes, get it in. That's what I would do. You'd scrap it. You'd scrap inheritance. Scrap it. Oh yeah. Just say that's a vote winner. Doing. Make a real division. I think it's a vote. You're looking at me like it's not a vote winner.
Well, I think that it probably will be a vote winner if he's focused on his demographic, and I think that that's actually important now for these two parties to hone in whether you're working class or whether you're going to, pander to the other demographic that are more likely to vote Tory. And I think that there needs to be clear dividing lines now, because I think there's been a few issues where the waters have been muddied too much. Probably a good strategy for him, in the Conservative Party in that sense. But do I agree with it? Well, no.
I mean, it is actually quite... Just reading into the detail on this, it's on the front of the Telegraph tomorrow, so, you can read it for yourselves. But Jeremy Hunt has said that inheritance tax is unfair. He's vowed to support the middle classes with tax breaks. He's vowed to build on 2 cuts to national insurance and said we made a start and we will go further. So this is... pretty big, actually, to be honest, on the front of the Telegraph. The Chancellor's promise to support for the middle classes came as private schools... so obviously he's hitting back at the Keir Starmer's private school stuff. An apparent effort to draw a dividing line with Labour on tax. He's signalled that the Tories would seek to end the effective 60% rate that applies to incomes between 100,000 and 125,000. Well, I mean, this could well be a vote winner.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And inheritance tax it does affect more and more people all the time because we're talking about lots of people buying homes and then having to sell them on. That affects a lot of people. House prices have risen. But for me, for a working person, I would like to see actual day-to-day taxes like income tax and national insurance really come down because that would be a real incentive for me to go out and go, should I vote Conservative or Labour?
Alex, the point about inheritance tax and why people hate it so much is that they've paid taxes, they've saved their money, they've done what they're meant to do, and wait for it when they're older and they want to hand on their money to their children, they then can't do it. And for a lot of people think, oh, well, if this is already taxed...
Yeah, it feels unfair. I think it feels unfair.
It's a real...
And let's not forget, very, very wealthy people have trusts as well, and they put their money into trusts, and they avoid it. Middle-class tax.
There was a story about Anne Robinson, off of Weakest Link, goodness knows what else. I remember reading this the other week. She apparently was worth 50 million quid, and she's managed to find a way of giving all of that away in her lifetime. So, people who've got a bit of clout to just part company with it anyway.
She has to live for 7 years, mind you, for them to get the full amount of money.
Well, good luck, Anne. I speak for everyone when Anne's relatives will be doing everything they can to make sure she clings on.
Keep it going, that's it, yeah.
All right, now, look, to an outsider's take on the current state of our politics, namely the Tories, Donald Trump's former key advisor, Steve Bannon, has lashed out at the Conservatives in this country for surrendering the country to the woke left. This is during an astonishing interview with GB News' US correspondent, Stephen Edgington. He doesn't hold back.
The reason we're winning in the United States, we're not depending upon a conservative elite who are gutless and feckless. We're depending upon mothers and fathers and school boards. We're depending upon working class people who are taking their extra time to go to precinct strategy because they said, hey, we're prepared to stand and fight and not let our country be taken. And that's what's important. Everything else is just conversation. You have to have the political will and the muscle to sit there and say, they can call me a racist, they can call me a nativist, they can call me a xenophobe, a sexist, a homophobe, all of it. When they get to that name calling, that means they've lost the argument and we're winning. You've got to draw that pus, you've got to lance the boil and draw that pus out of the system, and the Conservatives aren't prepared to do that. They'll curl up in the fetal position because they're not going to be acceptable with the clubs. You have to get over, you have to understand we're unclubbable, and we're proud of it, okay? And we're going to save our country, and eventually leaders will step up in England and come to the forefront and save the United Kingdom.
Strong stuff, that. You know, it's entitled to his view, I suppose. Right, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain Hung Union jackass. John, who is your greatest Briton?
Well, it's Alan Bates. No, over the post
You've done
office.
it every week.
No, but no, just think of it. No, I'll tell you what. No, think of it today, though, to have legislation going
and every
to the
day.
No. You see, that's the trouble about you lot. You get bored, don't you? You sort of 5 minutes on a topic and then you want something else. Alan Bates and the post office story is a terrific story of personal endeavour.
It is.
And if you can't call him great, who can you call?
If you keep nominating
him, I'm concerned. And also,
I might nominate as my UJ just to wind you up.
But he had that crack about Paula Venables. You know, she's been giving evidence today. I don't know whether you've been watching. Incredible performance. Gruesome, really. And he then says, Alan Bates asked, what do you think about it? And he said, it's like a figure skater, like a figure skating on the head of a pin. Yeah. And I thought it was so sort of clever that she just goes round and round and round, never gets to the point.
Which maybe explains a bit why she rose to the top in the first place. There's
exactly.
An uncanny ability, those people, don't they?
That's it, to avoid trouble, and they see it, and their own survival is the main thing.
A certain type of person, isn't it? Gets into position. Anyway,
I've known some of them.
Joanna, Great Britain.
Mine is the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, who have ruled that Israel must halt their Rafah offensive. And I think it's really important, no matter where you stand in the argument, it really is a desperate situation in Rafah now. You know, most of the people obviously were told to move from the north to the south, and they're kind of pigeonholed in this small area. And then Israel have now said that, you know, they want to kind of go in. And it kind of just mirrors, really, even the ICC and some of the things that they've been saying in terms of Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet office and potentially having arrest warrants for them. So it just all needs to stop.
It's a shame Egypt won't let them in, isn't it? It is
We shouldn't have to go to Egypt. That's the thing.
All right, fair enough. Right, Alex, who's your greatest Briton?
Mine is Carlo Acutis. He has been deified, I think. Is it deified? I don't know if it's deified, anyway. He is becoming the first... Beatified, thank you, John. He's become the first modern millennial saint. He was called God's influencer. Sadly, he died when he was 15 of leukemia. So this is a really beautiful thing, and he spread the word of Catholicism online and was essentially seen as the first influencer of his generation to spread.
London-born teenager is becoming the Catholic Church first millennial saint.
That's a lovely British story.
He's the greatest Briton. Hey, well done, well done. Carlo Acutis.
Are you both Catholic?
It's not a conspiracy, honestly. I'm a Protestant.
You're all Catholic.
I'm a Protestant.
Right, guys, we've got a matter of seconds here. So, John, very quickly, who's Union jackass, please?
OK, Michael Matheson, Scotland's former health secretary. Fiddled 11,000 quid on expenses, had to give it back. Should have resigned, only given 54 days off.
OK, Joanna?
Mine is Paula Venables. I got in quick because I knew John was going to take this. Obviously, with all the evidence she's been given, crying, and then, you know, sometimes kind of switching. It's been a bit weird watching her. But I just think, cry me a river. Do you know how many tears some of these victims have cried
for herself. She's
not
crying for
buying
herself.
it. Yeah. I was going to say absolute jackass then.
You said it anyway. Go on, Alex.
Mine is Conservative Party head office, also known as CCHQ, for obviously rejecting Lord Frost's application to become a Member of Parliament, or at least stand with the mass exodus of all the other MPs leaving. They need all the talent they can get, and they've rejected one of their greatest minds.
Very often in this situation, when I'm confronted by the decision I made in the office an hour or so ago, I could have gone for any of them. I went for CCHQ a while ago. I was in a bad mood, so there we go. We've gone for that. But anyway, there we go. Right, look, guys, thank you. Really strong show tonight. Thank you, everybody who's been watching and tuning in. I look forward to being back with you at 9 p.m. on Monday as we tear through the general election news again. I'll see you then.